Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual field trips. I'm Teresa, board member and volunteer for the Donor Engagement Committee, and I will be your host today. Today's trip marks our 50th episode, a huge milestone. We started these as a way to bring the parks to the people since 2020, and it's reached audiences from our local communities in the parks, all the way to park fans outside the country. Per usual, we took a break for the summer, but we're excited to share more about the projects that have been happening around the parks. I know we have several new audience members joining us today, so I want to take a quick moment to share who the Washington National Park Fund is. WNPF is the official philanthropic partner for Mount Rainier, North Cascades, and Olympic National Parks. We are incredibly fortunate to work closely with the parks and park superintendents as we work to fund 30 to 40 priority projects each year. Through all this work, our vision is to see that our parks are strong and vibrant, youthful, and everlasting. Before we start today, there are a few housekeeping items. This virtual field trip is 45 minutes long with a 30-minute presentation from our speakers and a Q&A at the end. Feel free to enter any questions that you have as we go. We also have closed captioning enabled, which you can access at the bottom of your screen. We welcome any feedback as we work to make these trips as accessible as possible. Now, if you're ready, let's get on the virtual bus to Mount Rainier National Park. We're joined today by several amazing people from Mount Rainier National Park and our friends at the Washington Trails Association. To get acquainted, I will start with brief introductions. From Mount Rainier National Park, joining us today is James Montgomery. James is a field supervisor for trail crews based out of the White River Sunrise and Carbon River Mowich areas, as well as the park-wide coordinator for volunteer and youth corps crews that come to the mountains seeking to assist park staff with trail maintenance activities. He's finishing up his 23rd summer of trail work at Mount Rainier National Park and is one of those rare, fortunate people who believes in the value of public lands and truly looks forward to going to work each day. And from our friends at the Washington Trails Association, Jen Gradisher is the Trail Programs Director at WTA. She's been with the organization for over 10 years, kicking off her WTA career as a seasonal Mount Rainier Trail crew leader back in 2013. Jen currently oversees WTA's statewide trail maintenance portfolio and team and is passionate about creating opportunities for people to connect to the trails. Also joining us from WTA is Jay Tarife. He is the Olympic and South Puget Sound field manager at WTA. Jay has been volunteering and working on trails with WTA since 2016 and currently helps to oversee our trail maintenance work at Mount Rainier National Park and beyond. When not working, you'll find him spending time with his family and apparently pretending to do outdoorsy adventures such as mountain biking, snowboarding, and backpacking for the gram. And last but certainly not least, also WTA, it's Casey Darso. Casey is one of the WTA's youth crew leaders and has been with the organization for 5 years. When they're not inspiring youth on day work parties and multi-day trips, Casey loves cross-country road trips, learning new things, singing off-key in their car, and climbing trees. We're so excited to be joined by these incredible individuals and to dive into our virtual field trip today. With that, pass it over to James Montgomery, who will get us started. James.
Thanks, Casey. Hey, everybody. How's it going? I'm James. And I've been asked to tell you how much Washington Trails Association means to me and to Mount Rainier. And I think probably the best way I can do that is through sharing a story of the first time I ever got to work with WTA. So I started working trails here in 2001, but I didn't get a chance to work with a WTA work party until 2007. I knew that WTA existed and that one or two crews a year came to the park, but that was kind of the extent of my knowledge. And as far as I knew, they were just kind of another volunteer crew that like would show up periodically and afford me and my coworkers opportunities to earn overtime, which we were all about, in the course of getting some good work done. So um, 2007. It's May. It's wet. It's slippery. It's kind of gross outside, and we've got about like I don't know 15 or 16 folks from WTA that show up, and I was like number one, like pretty impressed that that many actually showed because usually when the weather's that gross, people don't. But yeah, so it was pretty impressive. And then the patch of ground we were working like was these steep switchbacks, just like bunch of like blow down from years prior, and we're trying to like regrade this trail and have to be really careful that we don't like roll rocks and logs and different debris down on top of one another. So at one point we decide like, okay, we need to remove this big root wad. It's probably like 2 tons of wilderness that's overhanging one of the switchbacks so that we can work safely below it. And I start, like kind of digging and cutting roots and get to a point where it's time to start pushing on this thing. And Alan and Clark, whose last names shall be omitted to protect the innocent, came over to help out. And we're pushing with our legs and we get it to the balance point, but we can't quite get it all the way. And Clark, he stands up and starts pushing from up higher and like gets us past that tipping point, and it starts to go. And I just remember yelling like, okay, it's starting to roll. And I pull my feet back so they don't get hooked by some roots as it rolls over it. And I look up at Clark, and he's trying to maintain his balance, but he's still going forward. And I remember like time kind of slowed down, and I reached out to try and grab the back of his shirt, and I just missed him by a fraction of an inch. And I stand up and I'm looking down on him, and Clark's a pretty big dude. Like he's like 6'2", 6'3", 240 pounds. And he just like disappears underneath this root wad. And I'm just in that moment, I just remember thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I've killed my first volunteer. Um, so I'm like looking at this spot where I last saw Clark, and the root wad rolls over the top of him, and he pops right up, and he's looking down the hill as it, at this like just mass just goes down, careening off of trees and rocks, and just leaving a path of devastation in its wake, and it finally comes to rest somewhere like far out of sight from where we can see. And he just turns around with this big like glowing smile on his face, and he's like, man, that was fun, can we do that again? And I was just like, yeah, that's an experience I'll never forget. No harm, no foul, right? So later that day, mind you, again, it's been kind of a cold and wet and like semi-miserable day, and we're like hauling our wet, tired bodies out of this hole. And I get up to the trailhead, and I go to put my tools in the truck, and there's a Subaru with the hatchback open and a cooler on the ground, and everybody from the work group is like standing around with a soda in their hand, and they're passing a bag of cookies around. And I was just like, well, I haven't seen that before. And Lori, one of the assistant crew leaders, comes over to me with this little like lunchbox size cooler, and she holds it out to me, and she peels the lid open, and this plume of steam comes out of it. And I'm like, what is going on here? I look in there, and there are all these really neatly rolled, very bleached white washcloths, wet washcloths. And the look on my face, I mean, she just started laughing, and she's like, well, take one. And I kind of gingerly reach in and pluck one out and wipe all of the grime off of my face and the back of my neck. And she's got another bucket in her hand. That I, like kind of deposit this, not so clean washcloth into. And she's like, well, all right, now that you're, presentable, why don't you come over and join us for a snack? And so, I go over, we have a snack, we talk about the day. And I remember looking over at Alan and Lori and just saying, y'all are pretty next level, aren't you? Um, well, I didn't really know the half of it at that point. And I got the opportunity to learn just how next level WTA is over the course of the next 4 seasons on the Glacier Basin reroute. I got to kind of create relationships with a lot of different people who, they'd come back day after day, weekend after weekend, season after season, and I saw these people fall in love with the work. Saw people fall in love with each other. I saw people raise their families on the trail, and people grow old together, like doing these projects that like very clearly meant so much to them. And I think um, the most humbling part of all of it was that all of these people were coming and giving the most valuable resource any of us has on this earth, their time, to do something that I was fortunate enough to get paid to do. And that just, was something that really stuck with me. And I feel like, Mount Rainier and WTA, our relationship was really kind of forged during those Glacier Basin years, and has been, strengthening ever since. Um, and while I would, love to say that it's always been like super easy, the reality is that it hasn't. Like there's a cost to everything. And while I would love for our good words and our good deeds and our good intentions to be enough, at the end of the day, volunteer doesn't mean free. So as costs, the cost of doing business has continued to go up, and as the budget for the trails program has continued to go down, we kind of started to lose the capacity to be able to keep this going. And that's when Washington's National Park Fund stepped in and started to provide the financial wherewithal for us to be able to continue doing what we do. Um, I know I went back through a bunch of records, and since 2014, Washington's National Park Fund donors have provided over $709,000 just for trail work in the park. And with partners including WTA, we've been able to uh, reroute over 1.5 miles of trail that have been washed out or eroded. Um, Regrade over 8 miles of trail back to sustainable grades, brush over 22 miles of trail so that people can find and actually follow the path, install over 2,600 or recondition, I guess, over 2,600 trail drains so that we're preventing erosion, and our trails continue to shed water. Over 600 silt bars to prevent further erosion, and help to install 7 trail bridges to provide for public safety and resource protection. And while the immediate like physical impact of all of that is very real, and will benefit trail users, for decades to come. I think, like, to me, I know that everything I do is temporary, and it does pain me to know that over time, all the work I've done and all the work I'm going to do will fail eventually, just like all infrastructure does. But I do take solace in the knowledge that like the work we're doing, it helps to maintain and kind of build upon the incredible legacy that's been left to us, that are the national parks. And reaching through WTA and other partners to like kind of like build that next generation of stewardship, and just like being able to share some of this workload, and knowing that like every volunteer and every donor and every partner that comes to the park and helps in some way, like becomes part of that legacy. And it's just, I don't know, it's comforting to know that there are so many people out there that want to help, maintain what we have going here, and build it, better for present and future generations. And I guess all I can really do is say thank you, like from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. We wouldn't be able to provide the level of service we do without all of you. And I think I should probably be quiet now and, hand it over to Jen.
All right, well, thank you so much, James. I'm going to go ahead and get my screen shared for the rest of the presentation. So let me take care of that real quick. Okay, excellent. All right, so I'm gonna just talk a little bit. Again, my name is Jen Gradisher. I'm the Trail Program Director with Washington Trails Association, so I oversee our statewide trail maintenance portfolio. I'm going to start by introducing a little bit about who WTA is, in case you aren't familiar. WTA stands for Washington Trails Association, which is the largest state-based trails nonprofit in the USA, with over 27,000 members, a community of over 500,000 hikers, and we average about 160,000 hours of trail maintenance annually, with over 4,000 volunteers. So it's a pretty large program. And in addition to the trail work that we do, these are ways that we also help to support our federal partners as well, and other partners that we work with. So we do state and federal advocacy, public education, stakeholder engagement, trail planning, maintenance, and creating on-ramps for new communities into trail maintenance and outdoor recreation jobs. Our vision is Trails for Everyone Forever. And so these are a couple of campaigns that we like to group our work into. I won't spend too much time on this, but essentially we like to talk about the Lost Trails Found program as really our work that puts backcountry trails back on the map. So through the advocacy work that we do, as well as the trail maintenance work. Trails Rebooted, which is really where our work within Mount Rainier National Park fits in, is supporting popular trails at every turn. So thinking about ways to continue to make this landscape sustainable. Trails Next Door is thinking about those in our urban landscapes and those trails that might be out our back doors. And then Trails for Everyone is really building community and deepening connections to nature, all of which our work falls under at Mount Rainier as well. Just a little bit about how we fund our work, trail maintenance specifically. We are a statewide organization. Here's just an example of where we work throughout the state. Of course, this isn't capturing everything, but we work at all levels of public land, so local partners, state partners, and then federal partners like Mount Rainier National Park. And through all of these, there are various ways, through contracts and agreements, through various grants that we receive, and through member and donor support is how we come together to fund the work that we do statewide. Specifically, Mount Rainier, we have an agreement that is funded through the Washington National Park Fund. And just to share that 60% of WTA's revenue comes from WTA membership and donor support. And now I'm going to hand it over to Jay Tarife, who's going to tell us a little bit more about our history of Mount Rainier and what we're currently doing out there.
Thanks, Jen. Hey, everybody, I'm Jay Tarife. So WTA recently just celebrated its 30th year anniversary for the trail maintenance team this past September. And from our humble beginnings, we have steadily grown our presence throughout Washington state. We've been running volunteer trail maintenance program parties at Mount Rainier since 1998. And initially, as James mentioned earlier, these were a small number of trips, which were about 5 each year. However, in the mid-2000s, the park experienced a large catastrophic flood event that destroyed a number of trails throughout the park. And without enough park staff on hand to address these issues, WTA was able to step in and help respond to the needs of the park by increasing our capacity with more trail maintenance events throughout the year. Since 1998, WTA has run over 800 trail maintenance events with a total of 88,527 hours that have taken place throughout our partnership. We have provided over 80,595 total volunteer hours, which based on the current federal rate of $31.80 an hour, that equates to over $2.56 million in donated labor. Just this past season, we ran 48 trail maintenance events, which totaled 4,913 hours, which equates to $156,000 in donated labor for this year alone, which is quite impressive. And if you look at that photo down below, you see a photo of James, I believe also the carbon or the Glacier Basin Trail doing a tool safety talk for our volunteers. Next slide. So you may be asking yourself what's involved in any of these trail work party events. Well, we typically run 3 different kinds of events. We have single day work parties, week-long adult volunteer vacations, and multi-day backcountry response teams, which we call BCRTs. On these single day work party trips, they're typically within the first 3 miles of the trailhead, just because of the logistics of how long it takes to actually hike out to those sites within the time frame of a single day. We have adult volunteer vacations, which are supported trips, and the food is all provided. So we just ask you to take all your creature comforts in order to be comfortable out there for the week. And then we have our backcountry response teams, which are self-supported trips that can take you deep into the backcountry to fix a lot of those harder to reach places that we can't reach on a single day work party. There are a variety of different colored hats that you might see out on work parties. So I'm just going to do a quick overview of what you may see, or if you run to any of our trail crews out on a trail. Each crew has a blue hat, which is our chief crew leader. They are typically a staff member or a volunteer. That person is supported by our orange hats, which are our assistant crew leaders, who are typically volunteers that have undergone a lot of additional training provided by WTA. And then there is the bulk of our crew, which are our green hats, who are volunteers that show up and help us get all of that work done. Absolutely no experience is needed to participate in any of these trips. Each of our events start with a safety briefing, an overview of the tools, along with the project that we're going to be working throughout the day. We have a mantra out here at WTA for the 3 priorities that we focus on each trip. That one is safety. It's always number 1. Number 2 is to have some fun. And if you get both of those together, we're going to get a lot of work done. And we sure do get a lot of work done. Our day work party events are typically Friday through Sunday, starting in June and ending in early October. And we all know that trail maintenance is not an easy task. It is a lot of physical work, and we appreciate all the hard work that our volunteers accomplish. But of course, as James mentioned, we give out a bunch of snacks and refreshments throughout the day. But you can also earn a lot of awards and swag, and that's a great way to pull you into our programming. So after only 5 work parties, you can earn yourself your own own green hat with whatever nickname you want on it. 25 times is a cozy fleece vest with the WTA logo embroidered on it. 50 times is a handsaw with your name engraved on the handle. 100 times is a WTA embroidered beanie along with a 100 hard hat sticker for bragging rights. So if you ever see any of our volunteers out with a bunch of 100 stickers, you know they've been out for quite a long time. 250 times is a jacket provided by Outdoor Research with our logo embroidered on it. And there's a few more prizes after that, but once you hit that level, you've been a pretty dedicated volunteer, and you're probably not after the prizes after that. There are a variety of projects that you may work on a work party. Some examples may be to improve areas that might be muddy on a trail, by cleaning out drains or creating structures to help redirect some of that water off the trail. You may be building rock or wood retaining walls to make sure that the edge of that trail isn't sloughing off and you don't accidentally fall off one of the hillsides. You may be building a boardwalk or a bridge. And so there's a variety of projects. If you've seen something out on trail, we're more than capable of building it. And so if you show up in that work party, it's always a fun surprise at what you may be working on. We have worked on so many locations throughout the park, from Longmire and Paradise to Sunrise and the Carbon River. This past season, our crew leader, Elle, who's featured on that bottom right corner over there, wearing that awesome cowboy hard hat, has continued work this season on the Huckleberry Creek Trail, which is located on the northeast corner of the park, and completed a realignment of the trail due to the existing trail being under a lot of water. So if you like hiking in a river, that was your trail, but we did redirect that trail higher on the ground so it's no longer flooded. And that was a great joint effort between the U.S. Forest Service and the National Park. The second half of the season, we worked on a number of maintenance projects along the popular Natchez Loop Peak Trail, or Natchez Peak Loop Trail, installing a number of check steps to help control the erosion, along with setting up zip lines to haul rock closer to our work site, along with addressing a lot of maintenance issues along that trail. And it has been an absolutely great asset to have a crew leader living and working full-time in the park during the summer season, because not only do they gain an intimate knowledge of the issues that need to be addressed, but they also have the consistency on the quality of work being delivered as is expected when exploring any of the trails in the national park. And on the next slide, we're going to play a short little video for you that I created a few years ago while working on a small project just outside the Longmire visitor area on the Wonderland Trail, just to give you a little sneak peek, behind the scenes look of what goes on during a project.
Hey folks, my name's Casey. I have the really awesome job at WTA of working with our youth trail program. So similar to the work parties that Jay talked about, we have day work parties and we have week-long youth volunteer vacations. These programs run, statewide and year-round for those day work parties. And youth volunteers are just as capable as anybody else. They get a ton of work done on these events. So all of our standard day work parties are open for anybody age 10 and up to come on. But designing a few events specifically for youth volunteers has really helped us get participation numbers up and get more young folks interested and introduced to trail work. Our day youth work parties are primarily a closed registration for private groups events. So things like school field trips or scout troops who need to earn some service hours can coordinate with us to set up a work party for just their group. And then every first weekend of the month, we do youth and families work parties, which again are designed for ages 10 and up for youth and then their families to join in and get mostly an intro to trail work. It's a little bit of a shorter day, but those are open registrations. So that link gets posted on our website and anybody that's interested can sign up and come on out and give trail work a try. Both of those day work party programs are totally free to participate in. During the summer and the school break, we do youth volunteer vacations. So those are for high school students ages 14 to 18. And these are often 6 to 8 day long trips. They are overnight camping based sometimes car camping, sometimes backpacking, depending on those locations. As Jay said, food and kind of group gear is provided. We can also loan tents and sleeping bags, sleeping pads if folks need. But it's about 10 youth and 2 staff member crew leaders who go out for a week and then work on one project for that whole time. The Youth Volunteer Vacations program is an applications-based program, and there is a fee that goes towards that food and that staff time. But we have a very robust scholarship program, so we have never had to turn anyone away for lack of funds, even though there's a fee for those programs. So far this year, done some really impressive numbers in the youth program. Over 500 individual youth have come out on trail with us. I think last I looked, it was 525 as of this weekend. And about a third of those youth have returned for multiple events. So maybe came out with their group and then decided to sign up, for any of those open ones later. We've put in over 10,000 volunteer hours with just youth across the state. And that's been across 48 day work parties and 10 of those youth volunteer vacations. So a little bit of history of the youth program in Mount Rainier National Park. They've been our main partner for those youth volunteer vacations, those week-long based trips. So since 2008, when we did our very first one at Glacier Basin, we've run 20 youth volunteer vacations, provided over 9,500 volunteer hours, and have run 7 of our shared identity crews out of Mount Rainier. So these are all girls trip. We were partnered with Latino Outdoors for a while to do all Latina crew. And then my sort of pet project, the LGBTQ plus crew that we've been running for a few years. The next one. So why are shared identity trips important, and like one that I wanted to highlight is because these are spaces that we have intentionally designed to try to address participation barriers for folks that are underrepresented in our volunteer base. These are often a more approachable experience that helps folks come out and try trail work for the first time. And the intention is just providing a space to feel a little bit more at ease in our programs. Primarily, this is like folks don't necessarily feel that pressure to assimilate or kind of change the way they show up in a space. You don't have to code switch. If you know that the rest of the crew and the crew leader and the folks you're being, volunteering out on trail with share some aspect of your identity. And that it's a space where we can limit some of those microaggressions that happen. A really important part of these shared identity trips is the representational leadership. And I think this is really important for both youth and adults. We do both adult and youth shared identity trips, both day work parties and those volunteer vacations. And I think just being able to see somebody that you resonate with, that looks, like you, or you identify with in those leadership positions is really important as like possibility models, right? It makes you feel welcome. It makes you feel like you belong and you're supposed to be there and you can do that work, because you can. And so, yeah, Mount Rainier has been an awesome partner in helping those, helping us have a good space for leading those. A successful trip can really help folks feel confident and strongly connected to the community. And it's been a really important step for us in increasing the equitable participation and leadership of WTA work parties to run these events. As I mentioned, Mount Rainier has been a really great partner and a great location for us to do our shared identity youth volunteer vacations. At the top, you heard James's passion and energy for this program. And that has been a huge key to the success, right? Is having enthusiastic staff support, having folks who really believe in this, vision and align with the values, and being really flexible to meeting the needs that a shared identity group might have. For example, placing our crews in slightly more remote locations really helps us create that container and create that space. If you're not right in the middle of all the public, you can kind of take up a little bit more space without having to worry what the neighbors think, right? And so that's been really awesome that they've been able to give us locations that are accessible enough that our first-time campers or volunteers, can get to without necessarily being, kind of put on that very visible pedestal sometimes. Our LGBTQ plus crew is modeled after Northwest Youth Corps' Rainbow Crew, who ran their first queer crew out of Mount Rainier in 2016. And a pretty special thing that happened this summer while we were out at Mowich with the queer crew is Northwest Youth Corps' Rainbow Crew, their adult crew, also just happened to be camping in the same location. And so we had a 2-day overlap. So our high school volunteers got to see, adult trail crews out. We were able to engage with park staff and other park volunteers who also shared those identities. And it just really helps build that feeling and that culture of this is a place I belong and this is a place I'm, supposed to be. As I mentioned, that sort of visibility has always been a challenge. We don't want to hide our crews away. I think it's really important that people see those crews out on trail doing work. But for example, when you've got an all-girls crew with women crew leaders moving giant rocks and running zip lines and building structures, particularly male hikers tend to feel a little bit entitled to make some comments towards those folks. So that's been a thing we've been continually trying to problem solve a little bit. How do we both be in that public eye, disrupting some of those ideas, while not making our youth the target, of those. But again, just really awesome, communication and dedication from the park has made it that we definitely are going to be coming back and running at least one volunteer vacation for youth, maybe 2 next summer as well. So Mount Rainier's been awesome for that. And I just wanted to close out this section with sharing, the words from those participants themselves. So from a member from the all-girls crew last summer had said, "I really enjoyed the work party, and I think it was the highlight of my summer. I felt more safe and welcome there than I do in my normal life, which was really nice." So again, allowing us to create these spaces where folks can feel comfortable to challenge themselves and, learn some new things. A participant from our very first LGBTQ plus crew in 2019, who then returned for 21 in their application had said, never before in my near decade experience with summer camps and trips have I felt so accepted and welcomed. Never have I felt more in control of myself and more in my element. I had never been with a group of peers and leaders so caring and understanding. This trip changed my entire mindset about summer activities with people my age. I want to feel like I fit in, and to be completely honest, I just want to live with people who make me feel like I'm just human and average and normal. So those ones kind of, I think, really captured the heart of the work that we're doing out there at Mount Rainier from the perspective of the folks that come in. So yeah, I think with that, we're handing it back to the hosts for questions and answers.
Thank you so much, everyone. I'm Casey, by the way. I am the person behind the tech on our virtual field trips. And I just wanted to kind of take on the Q&A portion of the show, and then we'll have Teresa close us out here in a few minutes. So if you have any burning questions, feel free to just put it in the Q&A box at the bottom, and I can filter through those and ask the crew anything that your heart desires. But I just wanted to start off with something easy just to get the ball rolling. So for our speakers today, since you spend so much time in the park, what is your favorite area or trail that you have worked in? We can kick it off with James since he's working there.
Oh, geez, are you asking me to divulge secrets here?
No.
You know, I worked seasonally for 18 years. 11 of those were out of the White River Sunrise area. So that's kind of like a second home to me. But I've been spending a lot of time in the Carbon River and Mowich Lake area of the park these past few years, and it is just some of the most wild, dynamic, just scenic areas in the park. I think if you go anywhere in that area, you can't go wrong.
Anyone else want to jump in? Offer your secrets.
I can chime in. My favorite area is always up at sunrise, Burroughs Mountain, but early in the morning when dawn is just starting, it's when you get a lot of good wildlife viewing. It's really beautiful up there.
I can say when I first moved here, Mount Rainier was one of the first places that I visited, and the very first trail that I ever went on was the Rampart Ridge Trail right outside of Longmire. So not really a secret, but it was a great place to access, since a lot of the higher elevation trails were still snow covered at that time.
Cool. Well, yeah, I agree with a lot of those spots. I visited the Burroughs for the first time this summer, and definitely top 3 areas in the park for me. We have a question here from one of our audience members. How many first timers does WTA get versus return trail workers? Do any of their trail work volunteers go on to careers in public lands?
Sure, I can take this one. So we are actually in the midst of our Volunteer Appreciation Week, which is super exciting. And we have some of these stats somewhat available right now. So that's a great question, good timing. But basically we average around somewhere around 1,200 new volunteers annually. And a lot of that can be first timers who are just coming out with school groups or corporate groups, or people just signing up for their own. This year, as Jay mentioned, folks who have come out 5 times or more earn their own hard hat, and we gave out nearly 3,000 new hard hats this year. So folks are definitely coming back, and the year's not over yet. So super exciting. And yes, we absolutely have folks who go on to make careers. Actually, one of our longtime field managers is moving to Colorado, and he actually came up as a youth participant on one of these volunteer vacations, and kind of upgraded through WTA onto a career that's now taking him outside of WTA. And we've also been really leaning into our professional trail crews as well. So really creating those opportunities for folks to stay engaged after you go through some of our youth programs, or as a way to continue to make money if you are unable to volunteer as well.
I'm sure that's very gratifying and just awesome to see people kind of grow into, public lands and supporting public lands. I love it. This might be a question for Casey or Jen. Are there shared identity crews across the other national parks in Washington or other areas in Washington?
Yeah, so we previously were running the all-girls crew out of Olympic National Park for several years, and then switched over to Mount Rainier for a majority of those. But yeah, we go statewide with that program as well. So I was just highlighting that for the last 5 or so years, that Mount Rainier has been the first place we've thought of for placing our youth shared identity crews, but there's an adult Volvac that went out of volunteer vacation, that went out of Holden Village, this summer. So those are, day work parties and week-long trips statewide.
Awesome. We are short on time, but I will ask one last question. This is actually for James. If you had all the funding in the world, $1 million, what is the one thing or the big ticket items that would successfully sustain your work on trails at Mount Rainier?
Wow. Like one project, or
this is up to you. It could be 1,000 shovels, or focusing on the Wonderland Trail for an entire year, or your wildest dreams for the park.
My wildest dreams for the park. Well, boy, that's a tough one to answer. I think at the end of the day, we need. So like all of these trails were constructed by, the CCC or even earlier, using the technology of the era. Um, and so, you fast forward 90 years and all the technological advances we have at our fingertips, but for the most part, we're still using the same tools the CCC used, to maintain those trails. So it's not necessarily more tools we need. It's people power, right? And that's, like to me, like where WTA comes in. Like, I mean, 3,000 hard hats this year alone, like 1,200 new like volunteers a year. I mean that is like pretty amazing. And it's a great, I guess, source of that people power that we need in order to be able to maintain the trails in the condition we want them to be, that we feel the public deserves. Um, so I guess, I would, you know, put my efforts into, you know, uh, probably a lot of project design and just trying to figure out the best ways to get, the people to where the projects are.
That's very well said. And I think most of us can agree volunteers are the backbone of a lot of the public lands here in the United States and other organizations across our state. So people power always. This is not a question. This is just a comment from a viewer. It says, on behalf of the hikers out there, we appreciate all that all of you do. So I think that is a perfect segue into Teresa closing us out. I'm just going to share my screen of the different projects that we support in all 3 of Washington's national parks. And Teresa, feel free to just take it away and close us out. Thank you, Casey. And thank you again to James, Jen, Jay, Casey, and all of the incredible folks that you represent that make all of this possible. From the bottom of my heart as a fellow hiker, appreciate you. Thank you. And thank you to everyone out there who helps us support them in the important and ongoing work that they do. We are a team. It is incredible to be a small part of that team. And every single one of these experiences just is so inspiring. So thank you again to everyone that makes this happen. And thank you for attending and allowing us to provide another wonderful virtual field trip. If you're interested in learning more about the projects that we support to improve your experience as a visitor, projects that embrace inclusion, or volunteer and stewardship programs, I invite you to learn more about those projects at WNPF.org. We also like to invite you to our next virtual field trip coming up on Wednesday, November 15th. We're going to be celebrating our Native American Heritage Month and highlighting an incredible trip that was experienced by an all-Native climbing team on Mount Tahoma this summer that the WNPF family was so proud to support. The November 15th virtual field trip will feature voices of several of those climbers to share their experience and what it meant to them to be on the mountain this last summer season. I invite you to join us at WNPF.org/events to sign up for this amazing virtual field trip with those incredible voices. And if you'd like to see all the other episodes of our past virtual field trips, you'll find us on YouTube by searching Washington's National Park Fund. For today, though, all there's left to say is, again, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us, to everyone here. And we're so excited to see you next time.